What if I told you that one man changed technology, forever being fired from his own company? How did Steve Jobs go from a college dropout to creating the most valuable tech company in the world? What made Jobs different from other entrepreneurs, and what can you learn from his mindset? How did he revolutionize computing, music, animation, and mobile technology? This is the story of Steve Jobs, the visionary who built Apple, transformed industries, and left behind a legacy that continues to shape the world today. Steve Jobs was born in 1955 in San Francisco, California, and was adopted by Paul and Clara Jobs, a working-class couple who raised him in Mountain View, California, an area that would later become Silicon Valley. From a young age, Jobs showed an interest in electronics and design, inspired by his father, who was a mechanic and craftsman. His father taught him how to take apart and rebuild electronics, which sparked his love for engineering and aesthetics. At 13, Jobs called Bill Hewlett, co-founder of HP, and landed a summer internship where he got hands-on experience in the tech industry. In high school, he met Steve Wozniak, a tech genius who would later co-found Apple with him. He experimented with LSD and Zen Buddhism, which shaped his philosophy of life, creativity, and product design. Jobs enrolled at Reed College, but dropped out after just 6 months, choosing to focus only on subjects that fascinated him, like calligraphy, which would later influence Apple's design principles. His brief time at Reed College introduced him to typography, which became a defining aspect of Apple's product design. Jobs believed that great design is not just about how something looks, but how it works and makes people feel. This philosophy would later influence the design of Apple's Macintosh, iPhone, and MacBook. During this period, Jobs also traveled to India in search of spiritual enlightenment, where he adopted a minimalist approach to life, a belief that translated into Apple's clean and simple product designs. In 1976, Jobs and Wozniak founded Apple in a garage. Steve Wozniak built the first Apple I computer, while Jobs saw its potential to change personal computing forever. They launched it at the Homebrew Computer Club, selling 50 units to a local computer store. Jobs was not an engineer like Wozniak, but he had a knack for recognizing innovation and understanding what customers wanted before they even knew it themselves. The Apple II, released in 1977, was the first mass-market personal computer. The Apple II was revolutionary because it was designed for everyday consumers, not just tech enthusiasts. It featured a graphical display, color graphics, and a simple design, making it appealing to non-programmers. Apple went public in 1980, making Jobs a multimillionaire at age 25. Apple's Lisa computer, released in 1983, was a commercial failure but introduced graphical user interfaces, a concept Jobs would perfect with the Macintosh in 1984. The Macintosh was a game-changer. It introduced the mouse, intuitive UI, and sleek design, setting Apple apart from competitors. However, despite its innovation, the Macintosh was expensive, and its sales struggled initially. This led to growing tension within Apple's leadership, culminating in Jobs' departure. In 1985, Steve Jobs was forced out of his own company. After conflicts with Apple's board and CEO John Sculley, Jobs was pushed out of Apple, a company he built from the ground up. Most people would have quit, but Jobs saw failure as an opportunity. He launched Next Computers and revolutionized Pixar animation studios. Jobs invested in Pixar, turning it into the world's most successful animation studio, producing Toy Story, Finding Nemo, and The Incredibles. Next Computers was initially a commercial failure, but its technology laid the foundation for Mac OS X, which Apple later adopted when Jobs returned to the company. 1997. Apple was struggling, losing money, and on the brink of collapse. Apple bought Next, bringing Jobs back as CEO. His first move, reorganizing the entire company and focusing on simplicity. He slashed product lines, simplified Apple's focus, and introduced the Think Different campaign. 1998. The iMac brought Apple back to life with its colorful, user-friendly design. 2001. The iPod changed the music industry forever, making Apple the leader in digital music. 2007. The iPhone revolutionized the world, creating the modern smartphone industry. Jobs' vision was clear. Technology should be simple, elegant, and intuitive. On October 5, 2011, Steve Jobs passed away from cancer, but his impact remains. His vision transformed multiple industries: computers, music, phones, animation, and retail. Focus on simplicity. Less is more. Great design is about removing the unnecessary. Follow your passion. Jobs loved what he did, and it drove his success. Think different. Innovation means challenging the status quo. Embrace failure. Jobs' biggest failures led to his greatest successes. The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. Even after revolutionizing personal computing, music, and phones, Jobs was not done innovating. In 2010, he introduced the iPad, a device that bridged the gap between smartphones and laptops. This will be the most significant shift in personal computing since the PC. While tablets had existed before, none had been as intuitive, lightweight, and responsive as the iPad. Critics initially dismissed it as just a big iPhone, but Apple proved them wrong by redefining digital publishing and entertainment. Magazines, newspapers, and books moved on to tablets, revolutionizing business and education. Schools adopted iPads for interactive learning, and businesses used them for productivity, creating a new platform for developers. Apps designed specifically for tablets flourished, generating billions in revenue. The iPad cemented Apple's reputation as a company that didn't just follow trends, it created them. Steve Jobs was known for his intense, often ruthless leadership style. He demanded excellence and had an uncompromising vision, which made him both feared and respected. He pushed his employees beyond their limits. Jobs believed that people often set artificial limits on their abilities. He pushed his teams to do what seemed impossible. Reality distortion field. Jobs had a unique ability to convince people to achieve what they thought was unachievable. Perfectionism. He obsessed over every detail, from fonts on the Mac to the curve of an iPhone's edges. Passion for secrecy. Apple products were kept under extreme secrecy to build anticipation. Was Jobs' leadership effective or too extreme? While some saw him as harsh and demanding, others said his unwavering standards led to the best work of their careers. Would Apple have been as successful without his tough leadership? For years, Jobs fought his illness while continuing to lead Apple. He remained deeply involved in product development, making sure that Apple stayed ahead of the competition. As his health declined, Jobs stepped down as CEO of Apple, handing leadership to Tim Cook. Even in his final days, he worked on the next generation of Apple products, ensuring that his legacy would live on. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. October 5, 2011. Steve Jobs passed away, leaving behind a lasting legacy. How did Apple continue without Jobs? Many feared that Apple would struggle without its visionary leader, but thanks to Jobs' culture of innovation, the company continued to grow. The iPhone continued evolving, dominating the smartphone industry. Apple became the first company to reach a $3 trillion market cap. Products like the Apple Watch and AirPods showed that innovation didn't stop after Jobs, but did Apple lose its magic? Some argue that Apple became more corporate and less daring, focusing more on profits than disruptive innovations. Would Jobs have approved? Think different. The biggest innovations come from challenging the status quo. Jobs didn't ask what's possible, he asked what's impossible and how do we make it happen. Customer experience is everything. Jobs obsessed over how people felt using Apple products, not just how they functioned. Passion creates success. He didn't just work for money, he worked to build products he believed in. Simplicity wins. Jobs removed complexity from products, making technology easy for everyone. Failure is a stepping stone. From getting fired at Apple to failed products, Jobs used failure as a lesson. The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. If you want to build something groundbreaking, ask yourself, are you thinking big enough? Are you willing to take risks? Are you creating something people will truly love? Steve Jobs may be gone, but his influence lives in every Apple product, every entrepreneur who dares to think differently, and every company that values design, innovation, and passion. Are you ready to apply these lessons to your own journey? If you enjoyed this deep dive into Steve Jobs, like, subscribe, and watch our next video about another visionary entrepreneur who changed the world.